Greetings, listeners, and thank you for joining me once again as we celebrate stories and storytelling in all their forms and the bards and artists who bring them all to life. I am the Tale Collector and your host, Erica Adams. I'd like to dedicate this episode to a dear friend of mine, Aaron, who single-handedly rekindled my love for science fiction. Ironically, Star Wars was what had killed that love in the first place. As a kid, I thought it was boring with a capital B. As an adult, I do appreciate its place in cinematic history, but I consider it absurdly overrated. If not for Aaron, I might never have given its rival a chance. Now I too will boldly go for Gene Roddenberry's space exploration saga over George Lucas's space opera any day of the week. But it was actually a different series in the former's franchise that I watched first, since its episode count was much less intimidating. In hindsight, this wasn't a good idea as far as spoilers were concerned, but I was able to ignore that long enough to decide it was totally worth spending the next 2 months binging on all 80 episodes of the original series on Netflix afterwards. And so, here's to you, Aaron, for making me a full-time trekker. Live long and prosper, my friend. It's time to seek out some underrated new life and new civilizations with Star Trek, the animated series, first airing from 1973 to 74, and recommended for viewers 8 and up. By the 23rd century, the humans and aliens of the Milky Way galaxy have come together to establish the United Federation of Planets, an interstellar government which strives to maintain peace between all forms of intelligent life. To strengthen such relations, they have sent out a Starfleet crew in the Federation vessel, the USS Enterprise, led by the steadfast Earthman, Captain James T. Kirk, on a 5-year mission to explore space. The Enterprise crew encounter and befriend a variety of beings, some strange and intriguing, others as old and wise as creation itself, and experience cosmic phenomena both wondrous and perilous, while facing off against sworn enemies like the cunning Romulans and the deadly Klingons, all in their quest to share what they know and learn what they can, so that they may protect the universe and all its myriad races. Believe it or not, there was a time when the future of Star Trek was threatened by low ratings. Only a massive fan mail campaign ensured TOS a 3rd season at all, yet no number of letters could save it from an unceremonious cancellation in 1969. But then, syndicated reruns began. All of a sudden, its popularity soared. Viewers from all over the country were crying out for more Star Trek. As neither another live-action show nor a feature film was a feasible option, creator Gene Roddenberry approved an animated show instead. Not to be confused with 2021's Lower Decks, this first animated spin-off is a direct continuation of the live-action series of the 60s and brought back nearly all of the main cast to voice their reprised roles. William Shatner as Captain Kirk, brave, earnest, and fully dedicated to his mission to preserve and protect. Leonard Nimoy as the ever-impassive and logical Vulcan First Officer, Spock. DeForest Kelley as Chief Medical Officer Leonard McCoy, aka Bones, who brings a human heart to his high-tech healing. James Doohan as Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott, or Scotty, to whom the Enterprise is both family and home. And Majel Barrett as Bones' loyal assistant, head nurse Christine Chapel. Initially, only these 5 were to return due to budget concerns, but Nimoy firmly refused to participate, unless African-American Nichelle Nichols as Communications Officer Nyota Ahura, as compassionate as she is intelligent, and Japanese-American George Takei as the calm, collected, and informed helmsman Hikaru Sulu were brought back as well. He argued that not only were they too struggling for work at the time, but to leave them out would deny the very principle of inclusion and racial diversity the first show stood for. Needless to say, this was quickly rectified. But I'd be remiss for not mentioning Walter Koenig, whose Russian character, Ensign Pavel Chekhov, was unfortunately cut. As compensation, he was asked to pen an episode, The Infinite Vulcan, with the added bonus of the Retlaw plant as a tribute and fun little Easter egg, Retlaw being his first name spelled backwards. On a similar note, Spock was sadly the only non-human crew member of the Enterprise in TOS, half-human heritage aside. This was resolved with the addition of 2 new recurring alien characters. One was Lieutenant Eric's, a tripodal Endosian. If E.T. was man-sized and thinner, with bright orange skin, 3 arms and legs each, and a high trumpet-like voice, he'd be something like Eric's. He is usually seen at the helm alongside Sulu. The other was Lieutenant Morrison, an attractive felinoid female of the Katian race. She sometimes takes over for Uhura as communications officer and strongly resembles a lion, sporting golden brown fur, a tufted tail, a mane-like hairstyle, and a soft, husky voice often punctuated by strong purring. Unlike its predecessor, this was a half-hour Saturday morning cartoon for all ages, rather than an hour-long drama for teens and adults. It was animated by the now-defunct Filmation, well known for producing its shows as quickly and cheaply as possible via limited animation. TAS was no exception. Of particular note, fixed stock shots of characters are plentiful, movement only coming from mouth and eyes, including Spock's famous raised eyebrow, with the former sometimes hidden entirely by hands or extreme close-ups. While matching the relatively blank faces to vocal emotions is seldom problematic, this can unfortunately cause the few legitimate facial expressions to appear sickly or even creepy. But let's give some credit where it's due, shall we? The actors' likenesses are very accurate, and the rotoscoping of the Enterprise blueprints created for TOS more authentically captures the ship's meticulous details. Besides, it's not like we sharp-eyed cartoon connoisseurs haven't seen recycled footage before. Just look at classic Hanna-Barbera and Disney, not to mention dozens of anime, both old and new. But what TAS may have lacked visually, it made up for narratively. Animation offered a creative freedom TOS couldn't afford, allowing for new worlds, scenarios, and of course, aliens that would have been too costly and impractical for live action. Examples include Kirk and Spock being turned into water breathers by the reclusive fish-like inhabitants of Argo, a bombardment of planetary radiation which causes the crew to shrink rapidly, Bem, the arrogant colony alien commander of Pandro who selfishly uses his separation ability to trick Kirk, and an alternate time-reversed universe which regresses the crew into children. Strangely, the greatest controversy surrounding TAS doesn't revolve around quality or content, but rather its status as franchise canon. Why? Because it's a cartoon? But rather than going all Trekkie stereotype on everyone, I'm going to calmly and logically point out that not only is Roddenberry himself credited as creative consultant, but TOS head writer Dorothy Fontana has gone on record saying that this show is effectively the previous show's 4th season. Plus, when Filmation co-founder Lou Scheimer initially proposed to make TAS exclusively educational for children, Roddenberry put his foot down. Either make it like the old show, or don't make it at all. But of course, the new show still needed the 70s equivalent of a TV7 rating. I think this is TAS's most impressive aspect, being more family-friendly without sacrificing what TOS fans loved. The cast's traits, personalities, and interactions are spot on, right down to the legendary bickering between Spock and Bones. The show did offer elementary science lessons to explain as well as complement the exciting Saturday morning dilemmas. But like its predecessor, TAS was never afraid to offer its younger audience social commentary few other children's shows at the time would dare touch. Uhura, a black woman, once commands the Enterprise when all its male crew are incapacitated by siren-like beings. Pet euthanasia is addressed through a young Spock bidding farewell to his beloved Sailot, Ichaya. But arguably the most provocative is when Kirk defends the satyr-like Lucian, implied to be the devil himself, as a fellow living being. It was this exact mature writing which scored the franchise its greatest achievement up to then, the 1974 Emmy for Outstanding Children's Program. The submitted episode, Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth, uses the conflict between the crew and the Mayan wyvern-like deity Kukulkan to illustrate the somber truth that children can't stay dependent on their elders forever, no matter the latter's good intentions, lest the former lose the ability to think and learn for themselves. I'm really glad this series was seen for the artistic goldmine it was, rather than just the literal one. More elements from here than I can name have since been adopted and utilized in future spin-offs and films, from the Next Generation series in the 90s all the way up to J.J. Abrams' 2009 reboot and beyond. I believe that this, along with the aforementioned credits, should be proof enough of its rightful place in Star Trek lore. But regardless of the canon debate, all of the original show's thrilling action, stimulating concepts, and admirable character development abound in Star Trek The Animated Series, the little sci-fi cartoon that helped its franchise help future generations boldly go where no imagination had gone before. Gather round next time for another tale you may have forgotten or have never heard before. Until then, listeners, may inspiration always find you.